and we are right at 11 o'clock. So once again, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're located. My name is Steve Jones, and I'm a brokerage director here at BGA Insurance. I want to thank you for joining us for our DI 101 webinar. If this is your first time attending, big welcome. If you have attended before, want to welcome you back. And I'm very respectful of your time, so I'm going to try to keep this webinar around 20 minutes. First of all, a little background about myself. I have been in the insurance industry for over 20 years. I've worked for both insurance companies and also on the general agency side. So, for the lack of a better term, I have sat on both sides of the table. I've held regional group manager positions for a couple of group insurance carriers responsible for managing multiple state territories. And then for the last 10 years, I've worked on the general agency side, specializing in individual products. BGA Insurance, we are a full service general agency located in Costa Mesa, California, but we do work with brokers all throughout the country. We specialize in life insurance, both term and permanent, annuities, long-term care, and also disability insurance, which will be the focus of our session today. We do work with and represent over 60 of the leading carriers. We have great relationships with our companies. We're able to get on a phone call with an executive or an underwriter if we need to be on cases in order to hopefully get them approved and paid. We're very fortunate to have in-house case managers that are very experienced and knowledgeable. They're the ones that help us and our brokers get the application submitted, help them get submitted correctly. If anything needs to be ordered, paramed exam, interviews, medical records, etc., they're going to work with the carrier's underwriters to move it through the process. They will keep you as the broker updated all throughout the process with a goal of getting your client approved, getting the policy issue, and also getting you paid. Now, on a daily basis, I do work with all types of financial professionals, investment advisors, independent agents, property and casualty brokers, employee benefit specialists, Medicare brokers, so a full range of financial professionals. Now, today I'm going to talk about a type of protection that is not often discussed and it's definitely undersold. A lot of times it's kind of put on the back burner, and that is individual disability insurance. And I would venture to say that maybe a lot of your clients are not aware that this type of protection is available. What is disability insurance? First of all, and this is a little editorial comment, I prefer to call it income protection instead of disability insurance. It sounds a lot better. It's easier to talk to your clients about protecting their income as opposed to selling them a disability insurance policy. Disability insurance, it pays the policyholder a monthly benefit if they are unable to work as a result of an illness or an injury. Now, these benefits could be paid for a total disability, and there are also benefits payable for a partial disability. And if the policy is set up correctly, the benefits can be received on a tax-free basis, and that is if you pay the premiums after tax. And I find that most individual policies are set up that way. Now, if we were in the same room together, I would ask by a show of hands, how many of you are currently talking to your clients about protecting their income? Maybe a few. Or have you ever sold a disability insurance policy? Maybe a few more. Now, the market itself, there's been a lot of consolidation in the insurance companies offering individual disability insurance. Not that long ago, there was a lot of brokers out there making a very good living just specializing in selling individual disability insurance. That's not the case anymore. A lot of those brokers have retired, but there's still just as much of a need for this type of protection. One of the biggest challenges that I see that our brokers face is actually helping to establish the need for coverage. Now, these next few slides are going to help address those issues. Common response. This won't happen to me. I won't become disabled. This is something that happens to other people. And, hopefully that's true. Hopefully you'll never have any of your clients that do become disabled. However, we all know someone that at one time or another during their working career has missed some time for work due to an illness or an injury. Um, Studies show that 25% of 20-year-olds entering the workplace will experience a period of disability at some time before they retire. Common response you'll get is that people will think that accidents are the biggest cause of disability. But as you can see by this chart over here, accidents are less than 10% of the cause of disability. Usually around 90% are things not related to accident. That's, back conditions, cancer, heart attack, other types of conditions, maybe like a mental nervous condition. Those are the ones that are the biggest causes of disability. And the average length of a long-term disability claim is almost 3 years. Disability insurance is a type of policy that you never, want to make a claim on, right? Because something unfortunately bad has happened to you. But it'll give you a lot of peace of mind by having this type of protection, right? And you'll be very thankful that you had a broker talk to you about this type of coverage if something were to happen to you. One of the first questions I think it's good for brokers to ask is, Mr. or Mrs. Client, what do you consider to be your most valuable asset? And then, let them, sit back and answer. Common answers are going to be, well, my house is my most valuable asset, or my automobile, or they might have some type of, high priced toy, maybe a boat, maybe some type of jewelry, and then ask them, for these assets of yours, do you have insurance for them? And of course, they're going to say yes, right? If you have a mortgage, you're required to have mortgage protection, homeowners insurance. If you drive a car, you have to have automobile insurance. And they might have even purchased, this type of coverage, through your agency. And then a good follow-up question is, Mr. or Mrs. Client, how were you able to obtain, these assets? And of course, it's going to be, from their paycheck. So in actuality, it's their ability to get up in the morning, drive into their office, go to the job site, or maybe plug in at home to work and receive a paycheck. That is their most valuable asset. Another way to look at disability insurance is that it provides a foundation for a sound financial plan. As we have here, disability insurance foundation of this house. If your client's income was to stop, where would they continue to receive the money in order to pay their bills? Because the bills are still going to come in regardless if they're working and receiving a paycheck. Where would the money come to pay their, their health insurance, their homeowners insurance, their automobile insurance? Maybe they have goals for the future. They want to, save money, right, for their kids' college. They want to invest money. They want to save for retirement, and then further down the road, leave some money, to their ancestors. If their money dries up, they unfortunately would have to make a lot of changes to their financial plan. Some more questions to ask. What would you do if you were unable to work due to an illness or an injury? Do you currently have a plan in place? Now, some people, they might have a plan in place, but I find that many do not. And then, last but not least, where would the money come from if you were to lose your paycheck? Now, it's a good idea to be proactive. Reach out to your current client base. Let them know that this is a service that you could provide, whether that's like an email campaign, a phone call to your clients, or maybe during an annual review for other types of coverage you have with them. Bring up the fact that yes, this type of coverage is available, and I would like to talk to you about it. Uh, the last thing you want is someone else to call on your client and sell them a disability insurance policy. Next thing you know, they're providing them quotes on life insurance or their homeowner's insurance. And also, you would hate to get a phone call from one of your clients asking you, do you sell disability insurance? And then you say, yeah, I can help you out there. And then they tell you, well, I just went and saw a doctor, and then fill in the blank. It might be tougher at that time to obtain coverage for them. So be proactive. We're here to help you when those situations do arise. Common objections you're going to receive. I work, a safe environment. I got a safe job. I'm an office type job. Well, a very small percentage of disabilities are actually related to on the job injuries. Also, I don't participate in any type of hazardous activities. As we saw with the chart earlier, less than 10% of claims are actually related to accidents. I have coverage through my employer, and that's great, Mr. and Mrs. Client. But do you know what benefits your business provides for you? Most of the time, they're not going to know that. So then ask them, well, call your HR person or email your HR person, have them send you a copy of your benefits, send it to me, and I can review it for you. Because what you'll find is most all group long-term disability plans, they're employer paid. So if you do receive a benefit, it would be a taxable benefit, right? There are maximum benefits under most group plans. So for those high wage earners, they might be underinsured. And in a lot of situations, group plans will not cover any type of commissions or bonuses. So they might have coverage, and that's all well and good, but there could be some underinsurance issues that we could help you address to get your clients more fully insured. They might say, well, I'm going to rely on Social Security disability, and I think it's very good that we have that protection available to taxpaying citizens. However, the definition of disability for Social Security is very strict. It's tough to qualify for. Saw some statistics recently that the approval rate is around 30%. And as of February this year, the average Social Security disability insurance monthly benefit is around $1,600 per month. So on an annual basis, if I'm doing my math correct, that's going to be below $20,000, and it's going to be very tough to live on $20,000. Well, I've set aside some money in savings and investments, and that's good, Mr. and Mrs. Client. But did you save that money and invest that money to basically self-insure if you're without a paycheck for whether it's 3 months, a year, or even longer? And also they said, well, I'll rely upon my family and friends. And, that is an option, but that leads to a whole bunch of tough questions and could potentially hurt some relationships, down the road. Now that we've talked about, kind of the need for coverage and answering some questions and common objections from your clients, let's look at some basic individual disability insurance policy language and riders. Now, the elimination period, that's the amount of time somebody would need to be out after they're determined to be disabled in order to receive benefits. It's kind of like a deductible in medical insurance. Common elimination periods are 90 days and 180 days. Occasionally in California and other states that have a state plan, you have a longer elimination period. Obviously, the longer the elimination period, the cheaper the premium. Monthly benefit, that's the amount of coverage stated in the policy. It's usually the rule of thumb as far as income replacement is around 60%. So if you have somebody earning $100,000 a year, a 60% benefit is going to be around 5,000 a month. Now remember, that would be a tax-free benefit, whereas on group coverage, the benefits are usually taxable. Now, the definition of disability, it's going to vary by carrier. However, common definition is going to read something to the effect of due to a sickness or an injury, the insured is not able to perform the material and substantial duties of their occupation. There are different definitions of disability. You might have heard of a truant occupation definition. That's the most liberal definition. And that definition, if you're not able to perform your specific occupation, and this works very well for doctors, very specialized occupations like surgeons, where maybe they can't perform surgery, right? They're disabled, they can't perform surgery, but they could do something else. In that situation, they could potentially receive a benefit under their policy and then maybe go back and teach and still receive a benefit. There's modified on occupation definitions, which are going to look at the daily job duties, you're being able to perform those, and also not working in another occupation in order to receive a benefit. Some policies are non-cancelable and some are guaranteed renewable. Differences there are with non-cancelable, as long as you're paying the premium, the carrier cannot cancel your coverage. With guaranteed renewable, as long as you're paying your premium, the carrier cannot cancel your coverage. However, they do reserve the right in the future of potentially increasing your premium. Different riders, and the first rider, the residual rider, is one that I'll always include when I'm quoting, and it actually pays insured a portion of the benefit if they're partially disabled. So let's say something happens to you, your doctor says because of this condition, it's going to be a good idea to help you improve if you only work, 3 days a week as opposed to 5, or maybe work 4 hours a day as opposed to 8 hours a day. So there's going to be a benefit payable to you, but it's going to be a smaller benefit based on a proportionate share of your loss of income. Also, benefit increase riders, very important for young people, right? Just getting started in their career. We know their income is going to increase. This gives them at certain intervals as their income increases to increase their coverage, but not have to go through medical underwriting again. How you going to quote? So kind of some things to ask for. We'll need to know the gender of your client. Men are more expensive on life insurance, right? But women are going to be more expensive in regards to disability insurance. Obviously, need to know their age, what state they live in. Going to need to know their occupation. And when you ask for their occupation, get a good idea of what their daily job duties are. A lot of times we're requested to quote, well, my client's a manager. Well, a manager, could be anything. They could be a manager of a dynamite manufacturing firm and they're on the 20th story in the C-suite, or they could be a manager of a dynamite manufacturing firm and they're in the back of their garage, mixing chemicals. So let's get a good idea of what they do on a daily basis. Also, what their annual income is. If it's a W-2 employee, that's going to be pretty straightforward. Now, for business owners, we'd want to know what their income is after they deduct their expenses. In other words, what are they paying taxes on? Also, good idea to know, if they have any, current coverage, they might have some group LTD. Let us know what that coverage is, and then we can supplement that coverage to get them better protection. And then last but not least, any health issues. If we can find that information out front, I could go to our various carriers, have that conversation with them to see how that could potentially affect the rating for your clients. And I'm sorry, this form is hard to read. I tried my best to make it more legible, but if you'd like, reach out to me and I can send you this quote request form. And we've designed this for our brokers. Some find it, helpful when gathering their clients' information, or you can just use the information on the prior page. Give me a phone call or send me an email, and I can work up some quotes for you. Business overhead expense. This is another type of disability insurance that's designed for business owners. And if any have business owner clients or maybe people self-employed, I think it's a good idea to reach out to them to let them know that you can help them in that regard. Business overhead expense reimburses a business for operating experience during a period of disability for a business owner. It helps keeps that business running while they're out of work. Now, whether they're out of work for 30 days, 60 or longer, it does keep the business running. It's going to pay their rent, pay their lease, pay their employee salary for the employee benefits, keeps the phones working, utilities, the lights on, any type of property insurance, liability insurance, malpractice insurance, etc. And there's also plans. So let's say you're self-employed, maybe dentist or an attorney, right? You're going to be out disabled for a few months. There's also benefits that could be payable to bring in a replacement while you're out recovering um, from your disability. Some common questions to ask your business owner clients. And what I found from business owners, especially those small business owners, is their business is their baby. They're going to do anything they can to keep their business running. Um, Small business owners have a tough time taking off for a long weekend, much less being out for an extended period of time. Some questions to ask is, how would the business continue running if you were out disabled and not able to work? How depending is the business on you as far as the daily activities of the business? Would you have enough money for 3 months or 6 months to continue your business if you were out disabled? And how would that affect the disruption of the business? A lot of times the business owner's out. Next thing you know, their employees are starting to hear about it. And next thing you know, they're interviewing elsewhere. And you're out for an extended period of time. And then you come back, or maybe you're not going to come back because of the disability. And you're looking at selling your business. And if you have overhead expense coverage that is paying the employee salaries, paying the bills, hopefully the business is still operating at full capacity, and then you can sell your business for what it's worth. But if you lost all your employees, you lost all your clients, and then you're looking at potentially, unfortunately, selling your business for pennies on the dollar. Other types of protection, and I know I'm running late, so I'll kind of go quick here. You've probably all heard of buy-sell agreements. Usually buy-sell agreements are funded by life insurance. I've seen more and more that are also funded by disability insurance. If one of the owner is out disabled for an extended period of time, a benefit is paid so the remaining owners can buy out the disabled owner's interest in the business. You might have a key person that really drives a lot of revenue to the company. If that person is out disabled, you're going to have to bring on somebody else, going to have to make a lot of changes. There's a benefit payable, to the company to reimburse expenses related to that. And then last but not least, loan protection. You take out a small business loan, a lot of times they'll ask for collateral with life insurance. I'm seeing more and more lenders also requesting coverage that if you're out disabled, that disability insurance can help, pay off the loan. Ideal clients, doctors, dentists, attorneys, more of those white collar occupations. Now they do amount to a very high percentage of individuals that own individual disability insurance. But I personally have had a lot of success with even blue or gray business owners, right? They work hard, right? They have a good business. So let's say they own a landscaping firm, and occasionally they're out, trimming trees and doing stuff like that. If something were to happen to them, we want to make sure that they're reimbursed for their hard work, right? Self-employed people, there's also coverage for overhead expense and individual coverage for those self-employed individuals. Um, See a lot more people in gig type work. There's also some specialized carriers that we can go to in that regard. So if you do establish with your client, they do need for income protection, don't discount it because it's an occupation that you think maybe an insurance company would not be interested in. Little recap here. Sorry about running a little bit late here, but I really appreciate your time today. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two that you can share with your clients, hopefully help them, see the need for coverage, help them protect their income, and also, potentially increase your agency's revenue. And if nothing else today, you remember my name, my phone number, and my email address. I'm here to support you. If you ever need any assistance, more than happy to answer any questions that you might have about the product, maybe share some sales ideas, help you prepare plan options, or jump on a phone call or Zoom meeting like this with your client. But once again, thanks a lot for joining me today. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day, and let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to stay on the line for a few minutes. Thank you very much.